If you know even a little bit about gaming, Jeff Keighley is a name that needs no introduction. Jeff is a man seemingly locked in an eternal boss fight, torn between his genuine love for video games and the ever-looming specter of corporate demands.
Now, speaking of Final Fantasy, no. Today during Summer Game Fest, DoorDash has your back. You can get a free burrito when you order.
It is a balancing act that often feels like he's juggling a console controller in one hand and a branded energy drink in the other. While his career hasn't been without its fair share of cringe-worthy moments, it's impossible to deny Jeff's significance in the gaming industry. He is not just a participant, he is a key architect of the space. This reputation owes much to his magnum opus, the Game Awards. Billed as the Oscars of gaming, the Game Awards is an annual event intended to celebrate video games and the talented people who create them. While the premise of the show seems noble, it has been met with mixed reactions from onlookers for many years. Two major problems have consistently been at the center of discussions. The first issue is the constant parade of trailers, advertisements and sponsor shoutouts, which sometimes overshadow the event's mission to honor the artistry and the community spirit that make gaming so unique. The second problem is far more serious and harder to ignore. Of course, I am talking about cringe.
Having a great time so far, especially these fans right here who were rescued by no other than Shik's Hydrobot.
For more than a decade, this gaming festival has been a fascinating attempt to create a real awards ceremony for one of the biggest forms of media in the world. With so many eyes watching, every mistake made by those involved is met with intense scrutiny. And with intense scrutiny comes occasional controversy. A word so well recognized and feared that anyone in the spotlight has spent their entire career trying to avoid it. To examine and study how this word, along with many others, has impacted this popular yearly event, we will need to dissect and investigate its inner workings. It's hard to believe I'm saying this, but here it is. This is the Game Awards, comprehensive documentary.
More than anything, this is a show about bringing our community together in this room and online around the world to focus on something we can all agree on. There's nothing more powerful or more immersive than an extraordinary video game.
And today, Hideo is rebuilding his life in his studio. Hideo knows that a strong man doesn't need to read his future, he makes his own.
The whole concept of video game awards has existed practically since video games were a thing. Although in the early days the format was much simpler and primarily targeted a small niche rather than the broader customer base. If you're watching this video and have been involved in the gaming industry for some time, chances are you've heard of the Golden Joystick Awards, which began way back in 1983 and remains one of the longest running video game award shows in history. Like many events in their infancy, it was much more traditional, a formal, industry-focused gathering with less emphasis on entertainment spectacle. Naturally, a lot has changed since then, and the show is now more aligned with the awards format you would usually expect. To this day, it remains devoted to its original mission with a highly dedicated audience, though unfortunately that audience is relatively small compared to other major gaming events. Despite that, this and many other awards played crucial roles in recognizing video games as an artistic and cultural medium worthy of praise and consideration. In the early 2000s, the idea of televising these kinds of shows came into the spotlight, which led to the creation of one of the most influential and highly debated events in the realm of interactive entertainment. I am of course talking about the Spike Video Game Awards, also known as the VGA.
More than acting in How I Met Your Mother, it's playing video games.
Hold on. Olivia 1, what are you doing?
Oh, you're here.
Created by the television network Spike TV, the VGA was a celebration of video games presented on live television, bringing gaming into the mainstream. As far as presentation goes, it was head and shoulders above its competition. Instead of being stale and overly formal, it was an over-the-top spectacle featuring many celebrity appearances and musical performances. With a wide range of categories, from Game of the Year to Best Graphics and even Best Voice Actor, it was a bold attempt to present both the artistic and technical achievements of the industry. The very first show began in 2003, and over the years, the awards grew in recognition largely because there was nothing else of this magnitude on the market. Before anyone knew it, it was attracting millions of viewers and featured iconic moments such as the world premieres of major titles like The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim and Halo 3.
My team at Bethesda Game Studios and I have been hard at work on our next epic, and we wanted to find the right time to announce not only what that game is, but the day it's coming out. And that right time is now.
The Spike VGA's ability to reveal upcoming games while also honoring the best of the year's releases made it an important annual event, not just for gamers but also for developers. Of course, one of the most recognized faces associated with this glamorous ceremony was Jeff Keighley. Keighley's journey in the industry began in his teenage years.
I worked on the first Video Game Awards show ever in 1994 when I was, 14 or something, called Cybermania 94. A lot of my career has been about how can I elevate the medium of games and get more respect for the people that make games, right? So like behind the games, what we called, that GameSpot series.
One of his earliest major works was covering the development stages of Iron Storm, the studio behind Daikatana, a train wreck that deserves its own comprehensive documentary. His detailed reporting on the game's troubled production earned him recognition as a legitimate gaming journalist, and it was just the beginning of his tumultuous career. By the early 2000s, he transitioned from writing to television and became a correspondent and producer for G4 TV, appearing on shows like The Electric Playground and G4TV.com, where he provided analysis on video game news and trends. This brings us to 2003, when Keighley was brought in as a producer and consultant for the Spike Video Game Awards, helping to shape the show's format. Being well versed in the industry, he played a key role in securing exclusive game reveals, which became one of the VGA's biggest attractions. In some ways, it even surpassed E3, another widely popular gaming show.
My thing is just to be like crazy, like really to say stuff that like really disturbing. Okay. So like recently, I was playing Black Ops with a group of guys, and I told this guy that I was gonna cut his mom's head off on Christmas morning.
What?
Despite its recognition and flashy presentation, the show soon became a target of mockery and criticism, mainly from the core gaming audience. Remember when I talked about the Golden Joystick Awards and how, in the beginning, it felt overly formal and straight to the point? Well, the VGA had the exact opposite problem. It prioritized entertainment and celebrity appearances over gaming itself. Many of the people who were invited had little to no connection to video games and were completely out of their element. Who could forget that painfully uncomfortable time when Jeff co-hosted with Joel McHale, who was yet another celebrity with barely any involvement in gaming?
We're halfway through the show. Does that mean you're going to take a layer off?
Yes, let's do it.
All right, we're going to do it. All right, you want to do that? It's up to you.
Let's do it. Take the jacket off, Joel.
You'll see next. It's coming
next. That'll be a reveal after this.
I'm scared.
The chemistry between these two gentlemen was as stable as a nuclear meltdown. Even in this painful environment, Keighley still worked hard to bring more legitimacy to the show by ensuring that the game developers and the gaming community remained at the center of the event. However, there was only so much he could do under the influence of the television network. After years of intense scrutiny and eventual decline in viewership, the Video Game Awards underwent a major rebranding in 2013 in an effort to revitalize interest and regain lost audiences. Unfortunately, despite these efforts, the revamped VGX was met with overwhelmingly negative reception, largely due to the same problems that followed its predecessor VGA. The only parts worth watching were indeed entertaining, but for all the wrong reasons.
All right, now you voted for it, and due to our... Oh, never mind. Back to you, Joel. Yeah!
Holy crap. It's an open bar out there.
As a result, Spike TV decided to discontinue the show altogether, marking the end of what had been a decade-long attempt to establish a widely recognized and respected gaming awards ceremony. As we all know, this setback was far from the end for Jeff Keighley. He refused to let the collapse of the VGAs define the future of gaming awards. He understood that the format had far more potential than many realized, and he was determined to prove it. In 2014, rather than relying on traditional television networks, Keighley took matters into his own hands. He invested his own resources and passion into creating what we now know as the Game Awards, an independent video game award show that he personally produced and shaped from the ground up. Unlike the VGAs, which often leaned heavily on generic mainstream celebrities and flashy gimmicks to drive viewership, the Game Awards had a different approach. Keighley wanted the event to be a true celebration of gaming culture, developers, and artistic achievement rather than a spectacle designed solely for mass appeal. As is always the case, building something truly independent isn't easy, or to be more specific, isn't cheap.
Wood needed.
The enormous financial risk was likely the first concern on everyone's mind when this event was in the planning stages. Unlike traditional award shows like the Oscars or the Grammys, which have long-standing backing from major organizations, Keighley had to secure funding and partnerships on his own to make the Game Awards a reality. Thankfully, his connections and reputation allowed him to do just that. Some of the biggest brands in gaming quickly came on board. I'm talking Microsoft, Sony, Nintendo, and even Valve, to name a few. While these companies did not own the event, their backing ensured that TGA had the resources needed to launch as a high-quality production. With that said, I'd like us to take a step back for a moment to reflect on some things. Sure, it's easy to make fun of someone like Jeff. The Dorito Pope had his fair share of moments that made people question his true motivations. But his goal of creating a show that the gaming community could respect always seemed genuine to me. It's clear that this industry means a lot to him, and with this experiment known as the Game Awards, he was ready to paint on a much larger canvas. Keighley was no longer just hosting an award show, he was building something new, something overly ambitious. But the question remained, was the world ready for his vision, and more importantly, was he truly prepared for the immense challenges that lay ahead?
This shared love of games is what has brought us all together tonight, and why we at Nintendo will continue to keep working to make great experiences, whether you're a lifelong fan or just starting to play games for the very first time.
The first ever Game Awards premiered on December 5th, 2014 in Las Vegas, and the timing couldn't have been better. It was an important year for gaming as the new console generation was released, setting the industry standard with 1080p resolution and 60 FPS. There was also a significant shift towards digital gaming, with online stores like PSN, the Xbox Store and Steam experiencing substantial growth. Not to mention the many great indie titles that emerged, such as Shovel Knight and This War of Mine. The momentum for the event's explosive success was definitely there, and it was clearly ready to take off. For the first time ever, the show was streamed on multiple platforms, including YouTube, Steam, Twitch, and many others. As you can see, the format was elevated to a whole new level. Gone are the days of celebrities who couldn't care less about games they discussed. Now they have been replaced by individuals who actually gave a shit.
With these video game award shows, I feel like the people who really should deserve the Best Performance Award are the celebrities that they pay to come up here and pretend they care about games for minutes upon minutes.
Instead of being filmed in a small studio like at the previous VGX, the ceremony took place in a massive auditorium with a live audience, making it much more impactful and engaging. The message was clear. The show's main focus should be on recognizing the artistry and the hard work of developers. It honored both AAA titles and indie gems, and because of that it was a more balanced representation of the industry. Like its predecessor, the event wasn't just about handing out trophies, it also served as a major platform for exclusive game trailers and world premieres. With high-profile game announcements, the awards were a must-watch event, effectively merging recognition of the art of video games with their marketing. Most importantly, it dedicated ample time to celebrating video games and the various personalities associated with the community. The scale, budget and presentation were superb. With that said, what was the actual content of the show? Well, there were a lot of trailers for great games like Bloodborne and Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor, not to mention many interesting personalities such as Conan O'Brien, Lindsay Sterling, the two women who always appear in my recommended feed, and of course Boogie2988 before everyone realized he is an awful person.
What's trending right now?
Checking Twitter.
Better be the Game Awards.
I'm in tremendous pain! I'm in tremendous pain! Help me! Help me! Help me! I'm in so much pain! I'm in so much pain! I'm in so much pain! Looks like it's cats. It's always cats.
Unfortunately, we were also treated to Dungeon Defenders 2, a sequel that doesn't even hold a candle to the original game and effectively killed what could have been a great franchise. It was also a time when Battlefield forgot what kind of game it was meant to be and delivered a failed cops vs robbers experiment called Battlefield Hardline. Of course, since it was the year of new consoles, it was also a year of new incoming disappointments when it came to overhyped products like the Order 1886. Speaking of disappointments, No Man's Sky?
What you just saw showed for the first time just 5 of the ways that you can journey through this infinite procedural universe that we're creating. It's been a crazy year for us since Jeff gave us the opportunity to show the game off to the world for the first time.
And how could we forget Human Element? Do you guys remember this game? Yeah, neither do I, because unfortunately it got cancelled. Oh well. Putting aside my cynical nature, there were some amazing moments, like new footage from the upcoming Witcher 3 and Until Dawn. And to top it all off, none other than Imagine Dragons made an appearance. Naturally, a lot of awards were handed out, ranging from Best PC Game and Best Console Game to Best Performance by Voice Actors, Best Soundtrack and even Trending Gamer.
I wanted to congratulate you guys because tonight Destiny has won not only Best Score and Soundtrack but Best Online Experience as well. So congratulations, guys.
Destiny won Best Online Experience? Are you talking about this game?
That's just bad level design. That's just bad game flow.
I didn't get it! Oh my god, this is stupid now. This is just ridiculous.
The biggest award of them all, Game of the Year, went to Dragon Age Inquisition. I must say, that was a good choice. I'm sure the next title in the franchise will even be more amazing than this one. Of course, this segment of the show received its fair share of criticism. As you can imagine, many people didn't agree with the winners in certain categories, to a point that some even claimed the event was staged. For a show like this, comments like these are to be expected and are usually best ignored, but believe me when I say this issue is only going to become more obvious as we go further into the video. Other more genuine critiques focused on how some awards felt rushed or treated as less important, with many being handed out quickly or announced off screen. Keighley actually responded to these complaints by saying that he had to balance award presentations with entertainment segments and world premieres, which were a big draw for viewers. And while I understand that, you can't help but wonder why are awards like Trending Gamer given such a huge time slot, complete with Total Biscuit sharing his take on his win, while categories like Best Score and Best Indie Game were treated as complete afterthoughts. In the end, these small missteps didn't matter too much, especially considering that Game Awards 2014 was a huge success in terms of ratings, attracting 1.9 million views. This figure not only demonstrated the strong interest from the gaming community, but also validated the digital-first approach, which turned out to be the key to future success. All in all, it was a promising yet somehow shaky start, greeted with both excitement and cautious optimism. With that in mind,
how do you play?
From Las Vegas to Los Angeles, the 2015 Game Awards were set to make another big impact. However, some minor production issues were starting to show, particularly with the technical coordination required for live music performances, including sound, lighting, and segment transitions. Additionally, while the event had been well regarded from the start, not all publishers were fully on board yet, since they still favored E3 to showcase their new releases. Despite all of that, round 2 of Jeff Keighley's independent awards show was once again met with overwhelming success. People were treated to world premieres of Batman A Telltale series, Psychonauts 2, Far Cry Primal, and wait, is that Shaquille O'Neal?
I've been part of Turner family now for 5 years, and trust me, when I tell you, this is going to be big. Roll the clip.
Speaking of notable appearances, Conan O'Brien made yet another return. As for Cliff Bleszinski, someone should probably check on him since I haven't heard from this person since 2018. And of course we had Mark Hamill, alongside guy who, 10 years after, still hasn't finished Star Citizen. Feast your eyes, gentlemen.
Before we do, I have one question for Chris. When Star Citizen Squadron 42 comes out, will I be on the poster?
I swear I almost forgot to mention the reveal of Quantum Break, yet another attempt to blend video games and movies. I mean, does anyone watching this even remember that game? In an effort to make the show more diverse, there was this interesting segment featuring short snippets of 3 indie developers and the games they were working on. The process of creating a video game from your basement purely out of passion has always fascinated me, so this part was actually pretty intriguing. We also can't forget the unfortunate death of Satoru Iwata, the president and CEO of Nintendo. The man had been battling cancer for quite some time, and in July of 2015 he sadly passed away. The Game Awards actually dedicated a small segment to honoring his legacy, which was a nice touch. But for some bizarre reason, they followed this emotional tribute with Reggie coming on stage to speak about him while dubstep was blasting in the background. I mean, what the fuck?
To tell you more about Satoru Iwata, please welcome the president of Nintendo of America, Reggie Fils-Aimé.
What's more, this wasn't even the last notable story from Japan, because if you actually watched this show back in the day, you probably remember this awkward moment.
He would not be allowed to travel to tonight's awards ceremony to accept any awards.
In what was likely the biggest gaming scandal of the year, Metal Gear creator Hideo Kojima was barred from attending the show or accepting any awards due to his ongoing legal battle with Konami, as he was in the process of leaving the company. As you can imagine, the backlash was immediate and unforgiving, with boycotting being one of the first notable reactions. If you're not familiar, Fuck Konami was a social media hashtag used to criticize the business practices of Konami, initially coined by freelance video game reviewer and analyst Jim Sterling. During this controversy, the hashtag began trending online again alongside hashtag #FreeKojima. I'm still debating whether I should say Konami's reputation was destroyed, since by that point there wasn't much of a reputation left to destroy. This year we couldn't get Imagine Dragons on board, but we did have Churches and Deadmau5.
Right now I am chatting with Joel. Now you're performing later.
Yeah, later.
So what are you going to perform? I hear it's going to be pretty amazing.
I'm not sure who these people are, but their performances both on and off stage was definitely strange. Speaking of strange, what's up with the Elder Scrolls Online promotional material?
I get to have a freaking ice mount! I love it.
Needless to say, there were also the awards, and there's a lot to unpack in this segment. Splatoon won Best Multiplayer. I never played it, but I'm sure it is a solid choice. No Man's Sky won Most Anticipated Game, which is a bit of a strange category when you really think about it. You're essentially receiving an award before the game is even released. Who knows, it could end up being cancelled, delayed, or just plain terrible. Another notable moment was that Her Story, which is more of an interactive film than a traditional video game, received a lot of hate, mostly for winning awards like Best Narrative over more popular titles. Additionally, the actress from the game, Viva Seifert, won Best Performance, but the award was listed under The Witcher 3?
Viva Seifert, The Witcher 3.
Huh?
Did they just write it incorrectly on the paper or what? I mean, if you think that's confusing, Rocket League won both Best Indie Game and Best Sports/Racing Game. Like seriously, who writes these nominations? Ah yes, the trending gamer category. There were some great options that year, like PewDiePie, Markiplier and Total Bit.
Greg Miller.
Who? Bro, who the fuck is Greg Miller?
The person I'd like to thank is Nicole Tan. Nicole Tan is an environment artist for Crystal Dynamics. I have never met Nicole Tan. I beat Rise of the Tomb Raider this weekend.
Yeah, whatever. And naturally, we have the star of the show, the Big Game of the Year award. The competition was strong in this category, featuring masterpieces like The Witcher 3, the amazing and grim Bloodborne, and Metal Gear Solid 5, the game that personally got me into the franchise. There's also Super Mario Maker, which I had never heard of, and strangely enough, it seems like someone accidentally nominated Fallout 4.
And the winner for Game of the Year 2015 is The Witcher 3.
And so, TGA 2015 comes to an end, featuring plenty of well-deserved awards, exciting game reveals, and a few emotional moments. Despite a few hiccups, the show ultimately fulfilled its purpose, celebrating gaming and recognizing the developers behind it. By almost all measures, things can only go up from here, right? The new year brought new opportunities to surpass the previous show, and for the first time ever, the Game Awards could be watched on YouTube through virtual reality. Jeff Keighley and the event organizers also partnered with Tencent to livestream and translate the show for Chinese viewers, potentially reaching an audience of over 1.5 billion people. It was hard for Jeff to hide his enthusiasm, but not for any of the reasons just mentioned. Instead, it was because they had finally managed to bring Hideo Kojima to the event and present him with his long overdue award. Kojima also took the opportunity to reveal his next game. Unfortunately for all of us, it was Death Stranding. Randy Pitchford also made a memorable appearance alongside someone I can only assume was his hostage. Speaking of notable individuals, it wouldn't be the Game Awards without Reggie Fils-Aimé. This time, people were especially excited to see him as all the buzz in 2016 was about The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. And being the crowd pleaser that he is, Reggie was determined to satisfy that demand with some fresh gameplay.
Oh, please don't get back up.
Oh, grab his weapon. Oh, you're...
There was also a world premiere for Telltale's Guardians of the Galaxy and Prey, but don't get too excited because we also had to sit through a first look at the Assassin's Creed movie, which expectedly under-delivered in all possible aspects. Another thing that caught my eye was the game by the name of Dauntless, which was made by a completely new studio. However, its current rating on Steam is only 1. I have no idea what went wrong. Not even games by Digital Homicide were getting this many bad scores. Apparently, a recent update completely alienated its existing fanbase, so I just don't know the full story. It feels like a can of worms I'm not ready to open right now. Anyhow, Cliff Bleszinski decided to show up again with Lawbreakers, another unfortunate title that didn't last long in the gaming market. But don't worry, if you can't play Lawbreakers, at least you can buy the new special edition of Skyrim.
Sometimes it doesn't just work.
Once again, many famous and influential people made appearances to support and contribute to the show. But out of all appearances that stood out, one in particular became a major point of criticism. In 2016, the Game Awards featured an infamous marketing tie-in with chic razor blades, resulting in the appearance of their Hydrobot mascot. While the organizers desperately tried to find a way to fit him into the event, the stunt quickly became notorious for its commercialized nature and was heavily mocked by viewers. Not only was Hydrobot completely out of place, given it had nothing to do with gaming, but the sketches were also really cringe.
Hydrobot at it again. Enjoy the rest of the Game Awards, everyone. We gotta go. Hydrobot is gonna school me on how to protect my skin from irritation.
Fortunately, not all of the attention was grabbed by random sponsors. Various musical performances were also fighting for the spotlight. I have no idea what in the name of God that was, but look, these guys played Doom. To kick off the awards, Pokemon Go took home both Best Family Game and Best Mobile Game. Inside, one of my all-time favorite indie games won Best Art Direction. For Best Action Game, the award, presented by already famous guest Conan O'Brien, went to Doom. Then there was this strange segment where they presented the Games for Impact Award. I have no idea what that award even means, so I'll let MatPat explain.
The nominees for the Games for Impact Award convey powerful stories from the past, illuminate sad truths from the present, and even imagine possibilities for tomorrow, whether hopeful or not.
Yeah, I'm still not entirely sure, but whatever. I almost forgot about one of my favorite awards, the Trending Gamer. Who could possibly take home the prize this time?
And the Trending Gamer, the Game Award goes to Boogie 2988.
Good job, buddy. I mean, that was 10 years ago. I wonder what this guy is doing now.
You can't get paid in the month of August for faking cancer. Are you serious?
The Game of the Year award went to Overwatch, and I have plenty of thoughts on that, so I'll just keep quiet for now. Of course, many other awards were presented both on and off screen. Unfortunately, Battlefield 1 didn't win a single one, but the good folks at AMD decided to honor the game by making an entire PC inside a World War I tank. The whole time, it seemed like Jeff was on the verge of laughing his ass off while looking at this thing. I mean, seriously, instead of a compact box that could be placed just about anywhere, what's the average person supposed to do with this inconvenience? Now, there was one thing I found very amusing. You see, this year the show shifted its focus more towards actual gameplay and less on CGI, primarily to avoid the effects of misleading marketing, which, as you're probably aware, is a major issue in the industry. But here's the funny part, the reason for this change was none other than No Man's Sky. In case you forgot, that game launched in 2016 to a less than enthusiastic reception, and it was the catalyst for this switch. So maybe No Man's Sky should have been nominated for Games for Impact Award. I mean, when one game influences such a change in the format of your show, I'd say that's pretty revolutionary. This time around, there were some notable changes in the programming, some for the better, but others for worse. First off, my favorite change, the Trending Gamer Award, which I always considered a pointless addition, was significantly reduced in presentation. Jeff Keighley handed it out in a quick, no-fuss manner. A welcome change if you ask me, since the Game Awards should focus on actual games, not on people who scream in front of a camera, only for everyone to find out 8 years later that they tried to sleep with a minor. There were also some new categories introduced. One of them, the Best Student Game Award, highlighted games made by students, which was a nice addition. But then they added Best Debut Indie Game, and I have to ask, how is this any different from Best Independent Game? The distinction feels unnecessary. Since the Game Awards had now expanded into the Chinese market, they had to throw them a bone as well, introducing the Chinese Fan Award, which ended up going to a game nobody had ever heard of. Instead of featuring random hip-hop artists, Jeff managed to bring in an orchestra that performed iconic video game soundtracks. This addition to the show was so well received that to this day it remains one of its core elements. At one point, this guy made a hilarious joke about microtransactions.
The Game Award goes to... Oh man, I have to pay a microtransaction to unlock? That's so stupid that this has to... Hold on, I got this, guys. Here we go.
If only the poor bastard had known just how much worse things were going to get from that point on. But I won't get too optimistic, because it's time for Casey Hudson to take the stage. Remember him? This is the guy who used to work on Mass Effect, now he was stuck doing things like... Anthem.
You can equip your Javelin exosuit with gear that brings devastating power
What
to
the
combat.
fuck? What the fuck? That never fucking happens in the game. That's exactly what would make it fucking cool. It fucking lied to us.
Yeah, we also had Uber Eats.
Make your big night in even better. Order McDonald's on Uber Eats.
Okay, that was weird. Let's just focus on actual games, shall we? For starters, there were plenty of world premieres and some of them were truly exciting. Bayonetta 3 was announced as a Nintendo Switch exclusive, while GTFO, a cooperative horror shooter from former Payday developers, made an impressive debut. Metro Exodus also delivered with this amazing trailer. But one moment that sent people into a frenzy was a mere 5-second cinematic teaser for Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. Sometimes all it takes is the From Software logo to get fans hyped. Hideo Kojima made a triumphant return with the cryptic reveal of his new game, Death Stranding. Needless to say, when you have a strong lineup of exciting game reveals, you're bound to get a few duds as well. For instance, Jeff was incredibly excited about the reveal of In the Valley of Gods from the creators of Firewatch. However, as of now, the game's release date on Steam is set for 2029, which yeah, that's a long wait. People were also hyped for Battlefront 2, though in hindsight I'm not sure if they were more excited about the game itself or the controversy that followed a year later. Then there was this guy.
Look, the Oscars should fuck themselves up. This is the shit. I'm telling you, this is the real shit.
This is Joseph Fares, a video game director who, believe it or not, became one of the most iconic and recurring guests at the Game Awards. You could say this moment marked his debut in that role. Alongside his extravagant performance, he also announced his new game, A Way Out. Joseph might come across like someone who forgot to take his meds before the show, but his personality and the games he creates are genuinely impressive.
This is insane. If the whole world tell me your game is shit, I'll tell them, no, it's not.
Let's also not forget about this Amazon commercial. Wait, what?
Alexa, ask Ghost what mission I should play next.
We've got a Nightfall strike waiting for us.
Awesome.
Alright, I think it's time to talk about this. It seems like Hydrobot was just a glimpse of the dark future that was coming. While there were no more ridiculous mascots making you question whether God is truly dead, traditional advertising quickly filled that void. We saw random promotions for eBay, Uber Eats, Amazon, and even movie trailers. The Rock himself, Dwayne Johnson, made an appearance to promote Jumanji. Like, what is going on? Naturally, I understand that when you're running a show of this scale, you have to pay the bills. That's a given. But my concern is whether these ads are taking away from what the show is supposed to be about. Something like this has to be treated as a business. After all, the Game Awards isn't just some random event organized by a network that doesn't care about gaming. It's a widely popular and reputable show within the industry. Just look at the big-name personalities in attendance: Guillermo del Toro, Andy Serkis, Norman Reedus, and many others. Their presence alone is a testament to how much the Game Awards has grown in stature. And the numbers speak for themselves. Viewership in 2017 skyrocketed to a staggering 11 million, nearly tripling the previous year's figures. Now, with such high popularity, how far will they push these commercials and will they interfere with the show's message? If I had to choose, I would probably say that the Game Awards 2018 was one of my absolute favorites, if not my favorite show in the franchise. The pacing, organization, and performances between announcements were extremely well placed, making the event feel smooth and appealing. Even the commercials, which often feel out of place in these events, were actually aligned with the show's theme and carefully integrated so they wouldn't disrupt the experience too much. Like every installment that followed, this year's show was more ambitious and more impressive than its predecessors. For starters, the budget was in the ballpark of several $1 million. Jeff Keighley reportedly worked around 18 hours a day from August to November to make the show the best it could be. He also spent months traveling to different studios around the world to secure exclusive trailers, which definitely paid off. Because this year had an insane number of world premieres, and I mean a lot. I'm talking about titles like Far Cry New Dawn, Scavengers, The Outer Worlds, Among Trees, and the absolutely mind-blowing Hades. Like always, not every announcement in this lineup was something you would call a hit. There were some shamelessly embarrassing ones, like the Rocket League DLC, which was just a McLaren car model added to the game. I mean, how low can you get? Also, 2018 was the year of Among Us, so naturally Dead by Daylight tried to blatantly cash in on the trend by releasing a DLC literally called Among Us, and yeah, it was atrocious. Speaking of atrocious, the trailer you're watching now was originally meant to be a new installment in the beloved Dragon Age franchise titled Dragon Age Dreadwolf. However, it was later renamed and released as Dragon Age Veilguard. And, well, we all know how that turned out.
Your hair's so bright in the sunlight. Sorry, it's just really pretty.
Oh.
It was also the year of Battle Royale, so of course we had to watch Fortnite and PUBG engage in a dick measuring contest. Needless to say, the Game Awards wouldn't be complete without a healthy dose of cringe, and 2018 was no exception. Ninja and this puppet, which I assume is Mexican, delivered a performance so awkward that it nearly put me into a coma from second-hand embarrassment.
That's a good one, that's a good one. Oh, I'm gonna get some big V-Bucks for this, okay? That's a fork knife reference.
To this day, I still have no idea what the hell happened here.
Oh wow, what's this? This kind of looks familiar.
Doesn't now? Booyah, Grandma! Booyah!
You know what? I did say that I found these Game Awards to be one of my favorites, so let's stop with the bashing and let's focus on the good stuff. We were all really excited about the Video Games Orchestra last year, so of course they made their return, this time featuring Hans Zimmer of all people. Again, there were a plethora of celebrity appearances, including Jonah Hill, the Russo brothers, Brandon Urie, Christoph Waltz and even Joel McHale, who made his return. If you don't remember, he co-hosted with Jeff during the disastrous VGX 2013. But that's all in the past, and I think I speak for all of us when I say, Joel, we forgive you. There were also rumors about possible collaboration with Peter Jackson, but unfortunately the deal fell through. Honestly, none of that mattered when compared to one of the show's biggest achievements. Jeff somehow managed to pull off the greatest crossover since the Avengers. He brought Nintendo's Reggie Fils-Aimé, PlayStation's Sean Layden, and Xbox Phil Spencer on stage together to talk about games. It was a fantastic moment that truly represented the unity of the video game industry. Oh look, our dear friend is back.
Well, Joseph, we're excited to have you here tonight.
Don't get me started, Jeff.
The internet wants to hear from you, right?
One of the best improvements to the event had to be the award presentations. I had a lot of issues with the format in previous year, where many categories, including some important ones, were announced in a dry, uninspired manner with the presenter simply listing the nominees and declaring the winner. It felt underwhelming and lacked the gravitas that regular viewers expected. This time around, there was still a fair amount of quickfire reading, but only for the less significant categories. For example, there are so many esports awards: Best Esports Event, Best Esports Game, Best Esports Team, Best Esports Coach. I mean, come on, nobody knows these people. So those awards were handed out quickly and without much focus, which is exactly how it should be. The major awards, on the other hand, finally got the spotlight they deserved. Yet, even with all of that, nothing could top the Game of the Year award moment. Instead of a standard announcement, the Game Awards Orchestra played a melody of soundtracks from all the nominees. Thanks to how unique and awesome it was, this element continues to be part of the Game of the Year ceremony to this day. That's how much people loved it. Aside from the show itself, it was another incredible year for gaming. Red Dead Redemption 2 dominated the awards, securing 8 nominations and winning 4 of them. Meanwhile, God of War took home the prestigious Game of the Year award. Monster Hunter World was recognized as the best role-playing game. Even though it didn't win any awards, we also had Spider-Man making a strong presence. However, one of the most exciting moments for me was seeing Timothy Kane, the legendary game designer responsible for Fallout 1 and 2, take the stage to present The Outer Worlds.
We're very excited to reveal our brand new game and our brand new universe, The Outer Worlds. We hope you enjoy it.
So, how well did the show itself perform when it came to the bottom line? Well, it was nothing short of a massive success. The event was streamed across 45 different digital platforms, securing numerous exclusive deals and partnerships along the way. The show reached 26 million views, nearly doubling the numbers from previous year. At its peak, over 4 million concurrent viewers were tuned in, making it one of the most watched gaming events ever. It was clear that Jeff Keighley's vision, combined with the efforts of countless industry professionals, had paid off. The Game Awards had solidified itself as a prestigious and influential event in the gaming industry, and its trajectory was only pointing upward. After the monumental success of 2018, expectations were higher than ever. And if there was one thing the Game Awards had proven, it was that each year would only get bigger and better.
You guys maybe have
Stadia?
Son of a bitch.
Honored to be here. You guys ready to celebrate video games tonight?
If the Game Awards 2018 is widely regarded as one of the best shows, then the Game Awards 2019 is often considered as a strong contender for one of the worst. This particular event generated an immense amount of backlash and disappointment, accompanied by some valid criticism that is still being brought up to this day. Despite Jeff Keighley once again putting in tremendous effort to make things happen, many of the key elements simply did not come together. While some of the issues were entirely out of his control, others were direct missteps by the event itself. The problem started before the Game Awards even began. Nintendo's misleading tweet was one of the major sources of this controversy. A few days before the event, Nintendo of America posted a tweet urging fans to watch the Game Awards 2019, immediately fueling speculation among the gaming community. Given Nintendo's history of major reveals at past TGAs, fans naturally expected something big. Instead, they were met with practically nothing. If you had the misfortune of actually watching this event live on YouTube back in the day, you would notice that the amount of salt in the live chat could only be compared to the Atlantic Ocean. People genuinely felt betrayed, as though Nintendo had intentionally hyped up the event for no reason. But that was just the beginning. Leading up to the TGA, reports surfaced that Valve would showcase Half-Life Alyx during the show, marking a long-awaited return to the beloved franchise. Excitement levels were through the roof, but then, mere hours before the event, Valve pulled out without warning. The announcement never happened. Again, fans expecting to see the Half-Life franchise make a grand return were left empty-handed, and all fingers were pointed at the Game Awards, despite the obvious fact that this was completely out of their control. However, not all of the issues could be blamed on external factors. One of the most immediately noticeable and widely criticized aspects of the Game Awards 2019 was the sheer number of commercials. Yes, the show has always been supported by sponsors and advertisements, but this year took things to an entirely new level. Ad after ad after ad, it was like you were watching a corporate marketing event rather than something that is supposed to be the celebration of gaming. It reached a point where commercials often overshadowed the actual awards. For example, Google Stadia was a complete failure of a project that aimed to create a cloud-based gaming service, allowing people to enjoy games anytime, anywhere, without the need for powerful hardware. As you probably already know, it was universally criticized for being an overpriced, poorly designed system plagued by severe input lag, making real gameplay virtually impossible. So why, during the Game Awards 2019, was I bombarded with like what? 5 separate Google Stadia ads? And why did these ads seem to take up more screen time than some of the actual award presentations? And don't even get me started on those disgusting mobile ads that kept interrupting the show constantly. They were relentless, they were obnoxious, and quite frankly, they belong in the deepest layers of hell. Linus was also present at the event, but only to show how to sell his soul for Samsung TV. I mean, come on.
With a Samsung QLED TV, not only can you see more than ever before, but at 4K resolution.
Despite having been released 2 years prior, Fortnite was still making headlines at the Game Awards, this time with a shameless promotion for its latest in-game event, complete with, of course, yet another wave of new skins. Even J.J. Abrams made an appearance to promote the event, presenting himself as the director for Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker, but the way he spoke about it made it almost seem like it was a title someone should be proud of. I think you can see why people weren't exactly enthusiastic about advertisements slowly but surely becoming a bigger part of the show. Despite that, ads weren't the only issue. Another major problem was with the world premieres. By all accounts, showcasing first looks at upcoming games was one of the biggest aspects of TGA, second only to the actual awards. In many cases, the event delivered some truly exciting reveals, including Hellblade 2, Ghost of Tsushima, New World and several other great titles. That being said, we also need to acknowledge the overwhelming number of these world premieres, many of which weren't from big game studios or highly anticipated projects, but rather from small, unknown developers showcasing games that barely anyone had heard of. Some of these looked downright awful, and the worst offender was, without a doubt, the teaser for a game called Prologue. This so-called world premiere was literally 20 seconds of someone standing and looking around a rainy forest, and that was it. No gameplay, no story hints, nothing. It felt more like an unpolished Unreal Engine tech demo than a legitimate teaser for a major gaming event. Which begs the question, who in their right mind submitted this to the Game Awards? What were they thinking when they decided this was a suitable trailer for an event of this scale? And while we are on the subject, we can't forget the unforgettable world premiere of the Fast and Furious video game. This game looked so incredibly bad that I doubt there was a single person in the audience who was genuinely excited about it. This moment could have been a complete disaster if not for Vin Diesel's unexpected cameo.
Do not tempt me.
Not only did he help present the game, but he also went on to announce the winner of Game of the Year, creating an oddly entertaining moment that somehow salvaged what was otherwise an absolute train wreck of a presentation.
Me and Vin used to just literally spend all night playing Tekken fighter games or Street Fighter.
As you can see, despite its horrible decisions and corporate-driven themes, the Game Awards 2019 still had some truly great moments. One of the undeniable highlights was the video game orchestra, which, like I said before, is universally praised as one of the best aspects of the show year after year. There was also this excellent live performance by Green Day, and wait, is that Elon Musk? Even though he was no longer with Nintendo at that point, Reggie Fils-Aimé still made his regular appearance, reminding everyone why he remains such a beloved figure in the industry.
I may no longer be an executive in this industry, but I'll always be an ambassador for video games as a force for good and a force for fun.
There is real passion and love behind the Game Awards. The people who put this show together clearly care, and I have no doubt about that, which makes it all the more painful to say that we now have to talk about the awards themselves.
Best mobile game. The nominees, the Game Award in that category goes to Call of Duty Mobile. Congratulations, guys.
One of the things that fans really liked about TGA 2019 was the huge success of Disco Elysium. Widely regarded as one of the most innovative and thought-provoking games ever made, it received the recognition it truly deserved, sweeping multiple categories. On top of that, I was also glad to see Sekiro Shadows Die Twice take home the Game of the Year award, a well-deserved win for one of the most challenging and rewarding games of the decade, even though it's not really my personal favorite. However, it didn't take long for people to start noticing something strange about these awards, specifically who was winning them. Take, for example, the Best Strategy Game category. When the nominations were announced, I genuinely thought that Anno 1800 was the clear winner, with maybe Tropico or Age of Wonders as possible contenders. So you can imagine my surprise when Fire Emblem Three Houses won. I'm sorry, what? First of all, that game isn't even a true strategy, it's a classical JRPG with tactical elements, just like a million other similar titles. Second, how could it possibly win over the actual bangers on this list? Then there was the newly introduced Best Community Support Award. According to its description, this award was meant to recognize a game for outstanding community support, transparency and responsiveness. If that's the case, there are literally hundreds, if not thousands of games with better community support than the nominees you are now seeing on screen. And can someone with a straight face seriously tell me that Destiny 2 actually won this category? I mean, are you joking with me?
Destiny 2!
But still, all of this is nothing when compared to the allegations directed at Jeff Keighley himself. If you remember, 2019 was also the year of Death Stranding, a title that received mixed reviews and underwhelming responses from both critics and the gaming community. Despite its lukewarm reception, Death Stranding received the most nominations of any game that year and even won several awards. As you might imagine, this immediately sparked allegations of conflict of interest, largely due to Jeff Keighley's close friendship with Hideo Kojima. Many believed that this relationship played a role in giving the game a significant boost in the awards. Jeff again addressed these concerns by stating that he understood and appreciated the criticism, but insisted that he did not participate in the jury nominations or award decisions. He reminded everyone that from the very beginning of the event, the nominations for each category were decided by an international jury of media outlets, critics, and industry professionals. While Keighley has always claimed that he had no influence over the system, 2019 marked a year when the legitimacy of the awards was really called into question. The debate surrounding the shady choices for nominations and winners was just the beginning. This issue would soon escalate into a heated discussion, and I think you'll understand why once we examine the events of the Game Awards 2020.
So nice to be back at the Game Awards. As you can see, I'm in the middle of a mocap shoot, working on our next game, It Takes Two.
If I had to sum up the Game Awards 2020 in a single phrase, it would be this.
The Last of Us Part 2.
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 As you can see, we were more than ready for yet another year of massive disappointments. What can I say that hasn't already been said? The first major and obvious setback came from the presence of a certain virus from China, forcing the event to be mostly virtual. Jeff Keighley initially considered hosting from his home, but his team urged him to aim for something bigger. In the end, they settled on a mid-sized studio, keeping the number of on-site staff as small as possible. With a budget of around $10 million, it was the most expensive show to date, partly due to the mandatory virus tests and worldwide remote camera setups. It was another important year. After all, the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X had just launched in November. The team even wanted to include Henry Cavill in the show, but he was busy filming the Witcher TV show. Despite their best efforts, the Game Awards 2020 was once again met with mixed reactions, largely due to barely any interesting announcements, extremely questionable winner choices, and, of course, even more ads.
Transcend humanity through gaming.
I have shit my pants in the past. The truth is, it was not on the stream.
Firstly, let's address the elephant in the room. The Last of Us Part 2 received the most nominations and wins in the show's history. I don't know what kind of junk the people voting on these awards were consuming, but whatever it was, they should start selling it so that the rest of us can experience the sweet embrace of complete delusion. The Last of Us Part 2 is by no means a bad game, but it is beyond overrated. It absolutely did not deserve to win as many categories as it did. To put things into perspective, Red Dead Redemption 2 won only 4 awards, The Witcher 3 won 3 awards, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild also won 3 awards, but that's not all. In 2020, the Player's Choice Award, which is 100% community voted, was also up for grabs. With The Last of Us Part 2 dominating nominations and wins, you'd think it would take this one too, right? Wrong. The award went to Ghost of Tsushima. This is what happens when people who actually play games vote instead of these no-name gaming journalists. That said, I have to admit, this wasn't the biggest issue in my eyes. Sure, I hated the fact that Doom Eternal got absolutely robbed, not winning a single award, but if I had to pick my biggest gripe, it wouldn't be this. By this point, you're probably well aware of my frustrations when it comes to discussing the actual awards. For example, Best Community Support once again almost made me rip my hair out. The award went to Fall Guys, a game that was massively popular at the time, especially during lockdowns. I guess when you have a huge hit on your hands, spamming the game with new maps, skins, and of course more ways to squeeze money out of players is now considered the gold standard for community support. Do you know what a normal person would consider a game with good community support? It would be a game where developers actually put in long-term effort, listen to their fans, and in some cases let the community influence the game's future. That is something worthy of this award. Looking at the nominations, the only game that deserved to be on this list was No Man's Sky. And seriously, who in their right mind keeps nominating Destiny 2 every year? In the Best Sim/Strategy Game category, Crusader Kings 3 lost to Microsoft Flight Simulator. See, it's moments like these that explain why I have trust issues. When Jacksepticeye came on screen to announce the winner of Content Creator of the Year, the only thing running through my mind was, who are any of these people? If you met me in person, you'd probably assume I'm either terminally ill or terminally online. I'm both, of course. And yet, I've still never heard of Valkyrie. Who even is this person? But there was a small glimmer of light in the darkness. Despite widespread speculation that Fortnite would take Best Ongoing Game, the award actually went to No Man's Sky, a game that launched as an absolute disaster. But rather than abandoning it, the Hello Games put in years of work to fix their mistakes and deliver the product they originally promised. This was one of the few moments I actually enjoyed during this year's show. But let's not get too optimistic, because now we have to talk about the ceremonies. Like before, many awards were rushed through with nothing more than a name being read off a list. Only a handful had actual presentations where developers were given the chance to speak. The priority management here is something born out of a nightmare. Why are categories like Best Indie Game, Best Art Direction and Best Action Game still treated as complete afterthoughts where a presenter just reads the winner off a list? While categories like Best Mobile Game get a full build-up, montages for nominees and even a speech from the developers. The same goes for Innovation in Accessibility and Games for Impact. No one knows what these awards even mean, let alone how they are judged, yet they get all the screen time in the world. These made-up categories either need to be cut entirely or at least given less attention to make room for the awards that actually matter. I mean, come on, it's not rocket science. Then there were the world premieres. Once again, this part was extremely underwhelming. Barely any of the announced games piqued my interest. I guess I kind of liked Warhammer Darktide, Season, A Letter to the Future seemed relaxing, and the Callisto Protocol looked promising, though that one ended up being yet another disappointment. Tell me, what were you excited about? Maybe that Mass Effect teaser that hinted at a continuation of the original trilogy, yet here we are, 5 years later, still with nothing. If you're a Super Smash Bros. Fan and got excited about the new character reveal, maybe you had more opportunities to feel some hype. But for me, it all just felt like a never-ending commercial for games I wasn't going to play. Speaking of commercials...
But right now, without further ado, to present Game of the Year, it's my honor to introduce...
Master Chief is coming to Fortnite.
With the ridiculous budget of the show, there needed to be even more sponsors to pay the bills, and to our detriment, they delivered. Like before, a flood of ads kept cutting into the show at every possible moment, but the corporate influence wasn't just in the ads, it was woven into the show itself. For some reason, we can't have a single year without mentioning Fortnite. And sure enough, here comes another dedicated segment for that abomination, this time just to show off Master Chief, Daryl and Michonne skins.
Master Chief comes to Fortnite, you're getting them all, Donald.
Isn't that crazy? Like, Master Chief is just one of my most favorite characters ever in anything. And just...
To put things into perspective, this shameless, corporate-driven segment, which had nothing good to add to the world premieres, the theme of the show, or even the gaming industry as a whole, was given more time than Keanu Reeves appearing on screen to present the award for Best Game Direction, the montage of nominees, the announcement of The Last of Us Part 2 as the winner, and Neil Druckmann's acceptance speech. That's how bad the situation was. Fortnite represents the absolute worst in gaming. Despite that, I can't really blame them for getting so much attention in a show that isn't even theirs. 2019 and 2020 were definitely not the best years for the Game Awards, but thankfully the dark days are behind us. While the unfortunate reality of corporate sponsorships will always be a major factor in the event, their integration and the overall presentation of the gaming industry were much better executed in the next iteration of the show.
I will see you all in hell.
If there ever was a year that could be considered as somewhat redemption arc for the Game Awards, it would undoubtedly be 2021. The most obvious difference was that the show returned to an in-person event at the Microsoft Theater in Los Angeles. There was a possibility for the broadcast to be virtual again, but Keighley insisted on holding a live event. What's more, almost every major issue I had with the show the previous year saw significant improvements. One of the most noticeable upgrades was the better placement and reduction of ads. Unlike before, where advertisements seemed to dominate every aspect of the show, this time around they were integrated more seamlessly, making the event feel less like an overlong marketing showcase. To some extent, I feel like I was watching the Game Awards without constantly skipping ahead to avoid another product placement. While the sheer number of trailers remained a prevailing issue, the world premieres this year were genuinely exciting, featuring games that actually looked interesting and fun. I'm talking about stuff like Somerville, Alan Wake 2, Homeworld 3, Space Marine 2, Hellblade 2 and GTA 4, I mean Jesus Christ. Don't even get me started on the musical performances. I mean, legendary Sting himself made an appearance with his song What Could Have Been that he made for Arcane TV show. Perhaps the most significant improvement was the shift in focus regarding the awards themselves. I couldn't help but laugh when the Games for Impact and Best Mobile Game awards were essentially brushed off as a joke with minimal attention given to them. While on the other hand, categories like Best Independent Game and Best Art Direction were finally given the recognition they deserved, which was a refreshing change. This was probably one of the biggest problems I had with the last 2 years, and they fixed it in the most brutal and satisfying way possible. Also, the winners this time around felt far more deserving than the slop from 2020. Deathloop had 9 nominations and took home 2 awards for Best Game Direction and Best Art Direction. Forza Horizon 5 and It Takes Two tied for the most wins with the 3 awards each, the latter securing the ultimate prize Game of the Year. And of course, Joseph Fares made his usual appearance just to drop yet another F-bomb in classic fashion.
Saying fuck the Oscar and now... actually, in a way, the Oscars got fucked because the Game Awards is getting way better, so...
With a few exceptions, I would say that the balance between corporate demands, skits, awards and occasional musical performances was generally well executed. Of course, there were some bad apples in the mix, like the trailer for that beloved and critically acclaimed entry into the Lord of the Rings franchise. Yes, I am talking about Gollum. And let's not forget Forspoken, a game that, in hindsight, is shaping up to be a strong contender for worst game of the decade. Not to be outdone in the ongoing race to the bottom, the Halo TV show also graced us with its presence, a project that, to this day, remains a grotesque abomination bearing little resemblance to the game it's allegedly based on. Naturally, the Game Awards wouldn't be complete without a few painfully awkward moments.
Kaylee! What the hell do you think you're doing? Huh? That footage is strictly classified.
And personally, I absolutely loved being held hostage by Fall Guys promo segments where I was blessed with the delightful news of new skins. I suppose this is what they meant when they won Best Community Support, truly an award well earned. Now, if you want something serious, 2021 was also the year of the now infamous Activision Blizzard controversy. The company was effectively sidelined at the event, appearing only through its nominated games after being sued by the California Department of Fair Employment and Housing over allegations of harassment and employee discrimination. This was the topic that sparked widespread discussion at the time and only further tarnished the brand's reputation.
We gotta be real, and we can't ignore the headlines that are out there. Game creators need to be supported by the companies that employ them. We should not and will not tolerate any abuse, harassment, and predatory practices by anyone.
Jeff received a fair amount of backlash for his comments since he didn't specifically name Activision Blizzard, and his words seemed to come across as if he was trying to protect valuable industry relationships. Given how messy the situation was, it wasn't exactly surprising that, no matter how you approached it, things were bound to get dirty. Whether Jeff handled the controversy in the right way is up for debate, but despite the drama, I believe 2022 marked a turning point for the Game Awards, putting it back on the right track. While media outlets had mixed opinions, the general reception from people I saw was mostly positive. As we slowly approach the current year, there are still a few more shows left to analyze to see where this parade is going. So, as you can probably already guess, now it's time to take a look at
I've got the Samsung 990 Pro series. Shall we get started then?
No. Unfortunately, the Game Awards 2022 didn't really build on the strong points of the previous year, and what's worse, it actually repeated some of the old mistakes I genuinely hoped we had moved past. That part was underwhelming, but what definitely wasn't underwhelming was the numbers. The 2022's show was the first to break 100 million views. People love to call the Game Awards the Oscars of gaming, but what they don't realize is that at this point the Game Awards are bigger than the actual Oscars. More views, more hype, and honestly, in some aspects, it is on par as far as star power is concerned. I mean, they had Al Pacino show up to present the Best Performance award. In all honesty, how much bigger can this thing even get? Clearly, viewership isn't the issue, so what is? Well, for starters, I wasn't a fan of this year's pre-show. It is a segment before the main ceremony that has traditionally been hosted by Sydney Goodman and usually has a chill vibe. You can think of it as something of an appetizer before the main course. Even though it's not the main attraction, it still hands out some awards and drops a few announcements, so it's not entirely throwaway. But this time, it kinda flopped for me. For example, there were too many ads for VR and mobile games. Also, it's 2022, why am I still watching announcements for Among Us? The only things that actually caught my attention were the trailers for Atomic Heart and Replaced, everything else was pretty forgettable. One thing I definitely appreciate is how the best mobile game category is again treated as a complete joke and just brushed off in this segment. That part was actually pretty great. Then we finally get to Jeff Keighley kicking off the main event, and right on time if you ask me, because Sydney looked like she was about to walk into a cosplay contest. Like seriously, what's up with that dress?
Welcome to the Game Awards. It feels so amazing to be back in person with the fans and to have the entire industry with us here tonight.
Overall, the Game Awards 2022 did underdeliver, but it was still pretty solid, mostly thanks to a handful of banger announcements and trailers. There was a lot of good stuff to sink your hype into. I think we should dedicate this minute of silence to Forspoken. As expected, legends like Reggie Fils-Aimé and Joseph Fares showed up to bless us with their presence, and the video game orchestra is still the best part of the entire show. Another moment I genuinely appreciated was when Jeff talked about Kevin Conroy, the iconic voice of Batman who passed away just a month before the event.
After 30 years as the iconic voice of Batman in the Arkham video games, Batman the Animated Series, and countless other DC projects, Actor Kevin Conroy sadly passed away last month at the age of 66. He was such an iconic voice. He was so amazing in the Arkham games, and I know we're all going to miss him dearly.
Moments like these are why the 2022 show was still worth watching. But, like I mentioned at the beginning, we also had to sit through a few stumbles, and oh boy, there were some familiar ones. Let's start with the cringe cameo from Ryan Johnson and Daniel Craig talking about Glass Onion 2 and how they added a fun little surprise for fans of a certain game.
We have a special scene in it for fans of a certain game, so we wanted to bring a little something to that game.
For some reason, the word boomer echoed in my head the entire time I was watching this. Still, I'm willing to let it slide. At this point, awkward celebrity plugs are part of the TGA's charm. As you can probably already guess, my real critique is with the awards. Again. Take Best Indie Game Award, which honestly would be in the top 5 most important categories in a show like this. But once again, it got tossed into the background to make space for games for impact. You know, the award nobody understands, nobody talks about, and nobody remembers. Honestly, who even played half of these titles? Also, this year they introduced a brand new category called Best Adaptation, meant to recognize media that adapts video games like TV shows and movies. And sure, 2022 was a great year for video game adaptations, but do we really need red carpet treatment for this? I wanted to dig more into that, but then I saw the nominees for Best Sim/Strategy Game and my brain short-circuited. In every sane, logical, functioning universe, Total War Warhammer 3 obviously wins this category. I mean, seriously, there is no competition.
And the Game Award this year goes to Mario and Rabbids Sparks of Hope. Congratulations.
You know what? I give up. I really hope they're proud of themselves. Seriously, Jeff, how did you read that with a straight face? Thankfully, Elden Ring took home Game of the Year, so I wasn't as mad as I could have been. And hey, God of War Ragnarok didn't exactly leave empty-handed either. It walked away with 6 wins out of 11 nominations, including Best Performance for Christopher Judge, the voice of Kratos. Now, I kid you not, this man delivered an acceptance speech that lasted almost 10 agonizing minutes. I get it, it's a big emotional moment and all, but bro, wrap it up, we got a show to run. Even Jeff looked like he was rethinking his entire life while standing there, watching the minutes melt away, the time that clearly could have been better spent on something like advertisements. And who could forget that absolutely insane moment during Elden Ring's Game of the Year acceptance speech? Some random kid literally snuck on stage with the dev team and took the mic to shout out his Reformed Orthodox Rabbi Bill Clinton.
I think I want to nominate this award to my Reformed Orthodox Rabbi Bill Clinton. Thank you, everybody.
He was arrested afterward, and I'm still lost for words that this actually happened live. Wait, hold up. I know this kid. Where have I seen him before?
But,
You're literally 15. What do you know?
Bro, you know how to read?
Yes, I do know how to read.
Name 10 books.
Well, I read Game of Thrones. I'm obsessed with, like, the Twilight series.
Called?
Game of Thrones, the series?
In a nutshell, 2022 could have been better, without question, but honestly, the show still delivered. For all the hiccups I can't stop complaining about, it was packed with some amazing content, for better or worse. Showcasing games has become more important than ever, especially considering that just a year earlier E3 officially died, leaving the Game Awards as the only major event left to spotlight upcoming titles. Watching the sheer scale and popularity of this thing just makes me wonder, how much bigger can the Game Awards actually get? There really is only one way to find out. Same as the year before, the opening act was kinda disappointing, except for the World of Goo 2 trailer. I was just a kid when I played the first game, and I couldn't have been more excited for the sequel. It was easily the highlight of the opener. The rest of the world premieres were kinda underwhelming, honestly. I mean, I love Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons, but this remake just feels off. The original had this unique charm that doesn't quite translate here. At the end of the day, the main show is what most people tune in for anyway, and there were some interesting moments. First off, Matthew McConaughey, of all people, came out to announce Exodus, a new sci-fi game that he's actually a part of. Of course, we can't forget Black Myth Wukong and Monster Hunter Wilds. These are two of the very few games that actually give me hope for the future of gaming. I also really liked this amazing montage showing the evolution of No Man's Sky, followed by Sean Murray announcing his new project.
Let's take a look. This is such an incredible project, and I'm honored that we get to show it off. Should we do it, Sean?
Yeah, let's do it.
Here we go.
Gotta give credit where it's due, No Man's Sky probably had one of the best redemption arcs in gaming history, so that moment felt well earned. And at last, Ready or Not finally dropped its full release trailer. It's a great game, and seeing it reach this milestone is pretty cool. Now let's talk about this bizarre moment with Hideo Kojima announcing a new project called OD. Now here is an interesting part, nobody has a clue what this thing even is. According to Kojima, it's supposed to be a new form of media, whatever that means, and Jordan Peele is somehow involved.
Everyone, please welcome Jordan Peele to the Kojima-verse!
Naturally, there had to be something to make my blood boil, so here's an ad about how Rocket League is now part of Fortnite, because of course it is. And since I'm already on the topic of atrocious games, there was this trailer for Starfield. I just hate the notion of this game existing. It's a constant reminder of how much passion Bethesda seemed to have lost in developing games. Thankfully, I easily forgot about all of that since Skull and Bones also decided to show its ugly face. After being stuck in development hell for over a decade, it decided to crawl out and remind us all why we don't hate Ubisoft as much as we should. Honestly, it was like watching a decaying corpse on stage. For some reason, I found it immensely funny when the Exoborn trailer ended and Jeff gave it a standing ovation.
That was Exoborn. I met with the team at Gamescom to take a look at that upcoming tactical open-world extraction shooter, and the project is led by some of the creators of The Division.
As if that's some legendary achievement. He said it like The Division was this iconic, unforgettable game rather than the bland, underwhelming mess it actually was. When this next ad came on, I almost lost my mind, thinking it was more Fortnite nonsense. Thankfully, it was just some random Lego game. Oh motherfucker. At this point, I wasn't even sure if I was going to talk about the awards themselves, since you probably already know most of my gripes. Funny how easy it is to forget something like that when you look at the overall structure and realize how little time is actually dedicated to, you know, the awards. For starters, the Innovation in Accessibility Award got the short end of the stick again, handed out quickly during the opening act with barely any attention. I should be celebrating, but other made-up categories like Games for Impact and Best Adaptation are still being treated like major moments, which honestly just rubs me the wrong way.
Twisted Metal is coming back for Season 2 on Peacock. So, everybody get your motor revving!
My dear friend, I didn't even know there was a Twisted Metal TV show until you mentioned it just now. Then we had some controversy, mainly around Cyberpunk Phantom Liberty being nominated in several categories despite being an expansion and not a full-fledged game. Are we now allowing expansions to make the list simply because they're from a AAA developer or because they're so large that they seem to deserve a shot? There was also the drama surrounding Dave the Diver, a video game developed by Mint Rocket, a subsidiary of Nexon, a large South Korean company. Despite that fact, it was still nominated in the Best Independent Game category. Although it did not win any awards, its inclusion created a large amount of criticism that it might have blocked other truly independent titles from being considered. Critics argue that without a clear standard for what qualifies as an indie game, this nomination ultimately let the game slide through the criteria. So take that as you want. By the way, Sidney Goodman was the one announcing the winner of the Content Creator of the Year award, and honestly I still have no idea who any of these people are. I mean seriously, who the hell is Iron Mouse? Oh no, oh god, please no.
First and foremost, I want to express my deepest heartfelt gratitude
to the incredible community that has gathered around my streams, and
I'm too old for this shit. Christopher Judge came out to present the Best Performance Award, and I have to admit it was great seeing him poke fun at his own legendary speech from last year.
No 8-minute speech like last year, but fun fact, my speech was actually longer than this year's Call of Duty campaign.
Now, 2023 was undoubtedly the year of Baldur's Gate 3. The game swept the show with 6 awards, including Game of the Year, which was presented by none other than Timothée Chalamet.
Baldur's Gate 3.
But then came this infamous moment. During the developer's acceptance speech, the teleprompter literally said please wrap it up in an attempt to cut them short. I think this pretty much sums up the biggest issue with this show in general. There was so little time given to the actual devs and their speeches that even the most die-hard fans started calling it out. You can say that this debate really took off. How can a show supposedly about games and the people who make them barely gave those people the spotlight? To be fair, this has always been a thing with the Game Awards, but 2023 just pushed it to ridiculous levels. The unfortunate truth is that the awards themselves no longer feel like the central focus of the show. Announcements have always been the main draw, and at the same time, the show has to cater to corporate demands just to keep existing. It is a tough spot, having to constantly balance how much actual attention the awards part of the Game Awards should get. While this continues to be one of the most consistent criticisms aimed at TGA, it's just a piece of a larger puzzle of ongoing controversies that seem to follow this event year after year. The best example is none other than TGA 2024, which brought even more drama both on and off stage. Ironically, this also brings us to the final segment we're going to cover in this video. So, without further ado, let's take a look at the most recent installment of the Game Awards and the never-ending stories that seem to follow it. In all honesty, the Game Awards 2024 were okay, I guess. While not perfect, there were notable improvements that deserve recognition. Yes, the long-standing issue of certain awards being brushed aside or rushed through is still very much a problem, and it continues to give me headaches as someone who actually cares about the developers and categories that don't get the spotlight they deserve. It's also still a mutual back-scratching session between the event and its sponsors, no matter how hard they try to convince us otherwise. But if you try to ignore that for a second, when it comes to pacing, time management and the overall structure, 2024's show was a significant step up. Let's start with the obvious one. The awards that pretty much no one likes or fully understands finally got the treatment they've deserved. Games for Impact, Innovation in Accessibility, Best Mobile Game and a handful of other awards were thankfully thrown aside. In many regards, it was about damn time. There were a few exceptions, of course. Best Adaptation was still oddly in the spotlight, just like last year, even though it really didn't deserve that much attention. The nominations that year were so weak that they actually included that awful Tomb Raider TV show from Netflix. Fallout ended up taking home the win in that category, which was expected, but I was genuinely surprised to see Todd Howard show up to accept the award, given how Fallout 4 was treated at the Game Awards when it was released. So it was kind of surreal to see him smiling on stage, but losing is part of the game. Another bizarre and familiar moment was seeing the Elden Ring DLC being nominated in few categories, despite, again, not being a standalone game. It is extremely annoying and dumb when you think about it, and speaking of dumb, Space Marine 2 didn't win anything. I get that it's not everyone's cup of tea, but I think it at least deserved to win Best Action Game. On the flip side, Hellblade 2 received a decent amount of attention, which was nice to see. Baldur's Gate 3 took home Best Community Support Award, so thank God for that one. Moreover, the Best Strategy/Sim Award, the category that nearly gave me PTSD in past years, finally had a solid and well-deserved winner in Frostpunk 2. Personally, I was rooting for Manor Lords, which I think brought something really fresh to the table, but at least this time the nominees were legitimate and the win actually felt earned. And then, in what might be the biggest surprise of the night for me, Astro Boy swept the awards, taking home the most wins alongside the Game of the Year. All in all, it was a refreshingly decent lineup this year. What's even better is that we haven't even touched on the game trailers and world premieres, and there were some incredible announcements. Things like Borderlands 4, Turok Origins, The Long Dark 2, The Outer Worlds 2, and also this untitled project from the creators of Shadow of the Colossus. Anything that even remotely resembles Terraria gets my vote, so let me just say it now, Kiora looks absolutely stunning. Dying Light, The Beast and Project Century were also interesting to watch. However, I found it kinda weird that Jeff was visibly thrilled to showcase a new game from Naughty Dog. Personally, I don't get the hype, we didn't really see much in terms of gameplay, just a small snippet of the overall story. Thankfully, we did have more good stuff, like Aaron Paul and Jennifer Wright showing up to announce their new game Dispatch. As far as celebrity appearances go, we also had Post Malone, Snoop Dogg and even Harrison Ford himself, but the real highlight for me was seeing our old friend. Welcome back, Joseph.
We have a saying where we say, we fuck shit up without fucking up.
I swear, pun intended, this guy just doesn't give a shit anymore and I absolutely love him. In a year filled with massively disappointing and outright horrible games, it was incredible that the show still managed to be genuinely enjoyable. That's why it pains me to shift from praise to criticism, but unfortunately there is something that can't be ignored. The organizers of TGA made a deeply misguided decision that now smears an otherwise very solid show. For those unaware, they attempted to trademark the term The Game Awards under the justification of protecting the brand. On the surface, that might seem like a reasonable business move, but when you really think about it, it's an absolutely tone-deaf and unnecessary play. Let's not forget, the phrase The Game Awards isn't some original, unique creation. It is a general term that has existed long before Jeff and will continue to exist long after him. Trying to claim ownership over something so broad and culturally significant comes across as selfish and out of touch. It feels less like brand protection and more like a power grab, one that simply does not sit right with a lot of people in the gaming community. Even though this situation didn't explode in the mainstream media or draw attention from massive YouTubers, it was still relevant enough to steer conversations on platforms like Reddit and Twitter. It is disappointing, because the show is good, it has genuinely enjoyable moments and solid presentations. But this trademark stunt feels like a self-inflicted wound. Instead of letting the improvements shine, the narrative was hijacked by drama that didn't need to happen. It added another layer of corporate cynicism to an event that should be about celebrating games and the people who make them, not about who can legally own a phrase that belongs to the whole industry. At the end of the day, this wasn't just a poor business move, it exposed a deeper issue. It made Jeff and the team behind the Game Awards look even more like corporate gatekeepers than passionate advocates for the medium. This is just one of the many reasons why TGA has the reputation that it has among gamers. After all, that is the real shame, because they had something good going on. In the future, try to focus on keeping the show about what truly matters: the games, the creators, and of course, the community. From my personal perspective, it's almost surreal to think that the Game Awards has now been running for 10 years. A show that, in my mind, still feels like a relatively new addition to the gaming world has somehow become a decade-long tradition. How do we begin to describe this unique creation? What started as Jeff Keighley's dream to build a globally recognized award show dedicated to what is arguably the most influential entertainment medium of our time has, by most measures, been a resounding success. From the high-quality production values to its explosive popularity and staggering viewership numbers, the Game Awards is now, without question, the biggest annual event in gaming. But as the show has grown, it hasn't been without its criticisms, and those concerns are becoming harder to ignore. In recent years, the tone and direction of the event have begun to shift. The original spirit of celebrating artistry and innovation in games sometimes feels sidelined as the focus leans heavily towards trailers, world premieres, and corporate partnerships. The increasing influence of big publishers and media conglomerates is shaping the event in ways that make it feel less like a heartfelt tribute to game developers and more like a carefully choreographed marketing machine. In that sense, the Game Awards has become a reflection of the gaming industry itself, full of brilliance and passion, but also embroiled in the complexities of corporate interests. Now, let's take a moment to be brutally honest. Are the criticisms people throw at the Game Awards truly valid, and more importantly, would addressing them actually make the show better? Try to think back to the Golden Joystick Awards, which I mentioned earlier. That show doesn't bury the actual awards under a mountain of trailers, flashy announcements, or shameless sponsorships. It is a stripped down, straightforward celebration of games, where developers are given ample time and spotlight to reflect on their work. In many ways, it is everything that the Game Awards isn't. Despite all of its integrity and focus, the Golden Joystick Awards draw only a fraction of the viewership. Their cultural impact is a blip compared to the spectacle that is the Game Awards. Many award winners don't even bother to attend, and that honestly speaks volumes. If the very people being celebrated don't find the time to show up, what does that say about how the industry at large views the event? It doesn't trend on social media, it doesn't get the clicks, it doesn't go viral, and while that doesn't necessarily make it less meaningful, it does make it less visible. So maybe the problem isn't just the format of the show, it is the tug of war between what we say we value and what we actually engage with. That is perhaps why the impact of the Game Awards is so undeniable. After all of this, we are left wondering, will the show continue to drift further into the realm of sponsorships, or will it one day return to a deeper focus on honoring the games that truly move us? Whatever your opinion might be, we can't deny that Jeff Keighley is here to stay, and with him, the Game Awards, now firmly established as the most significant event in gaming.